Here's an example of how terrible the NBA scheduling is for player sleep. On November 20th, 2018, the Brooklyn Nets played in Miami against the Heat at 7:30 p.m. local time. The next day, they had to fly all the way to Dallas to play the Mavericks at 7:30 p.m. local time. Let's walk through what the timeline of events is for the Brooklyn Nets here. Tip-off in Miami was at 7:30, so the final buzzer sounded, let's say, about 2.5 hours later at 10. After the game, everyone's got to change out of their jerseys, hit the showers, maybe field a couple questions from the press. Maybe that takes 30 minutes, so now it's 10:30. Everybody boards the bus. Bus is on the road at maybe 10:45. Gotta head straight to the airport, should take another half hour. Now it's 11:15. If they're really quick, they could board their plane and take off by midnight. Now, according to a cursory Google search, nonstop flights from Miami to Dallas take about 3.5 hours. But remember, they get an hour back from the time zone change, so when they land, it's 2:30 Texas time. Let's give them another hour or so to deplane, get baggage, board the bus, and get to the hotel at 3:30. At best, this means players are in bed by 3:45 a.m. Now let's be generous and say the Nets expect their players to be at practice by 9 a.m. In reality, plenty of teams expect or at least normalize starting practice earlier than this, but let's give the Nets a benefit of the doubt here. This means that they probably have to wake up around 8 at the latest. That leaves, and this is a generous upper bound here, 4 hours and 15 minutes for everyone to sleep in a bed at the hotel. That is really bad. But it's a super common problem among pro athletes. In the first 2 months of the 2018 season, that Brooklyn Nets team played 24 games. And of those 24 games, 6 of them were scheduled for less than 24 hours after the previous game. Tightly scheduled games and long early practice times, enforced by coaches and sports culture, can make it really difficult to get proper sleep as a pro athlete.
But wait, you forgot about all the time they could have spent sleeping on the plane or the bus.
Sure, they can try. But have you ever tried to sleep on a plane before? I have. It's not easy. Here's the thing with sleep. Essentially, it's a cycle with 4 phases, called Stage 1, Stage 2, Stage 3, and REM. They all serve important restorative functions, but in order for the whole big sleep machine to work properly, you have to have a balance of all 4 of these phases. The problem with sleeping on planes, or really any place that isn't a bed, is that you're gonna get woken up by an uncomfortable sleeping position or turbulence or a crying baby or whatever. That means you're not gonna have good sleep and you're probably gonna feel groggy when you wake up because you're going to interrupt your natural sleep cycle. On top of that, sleep is important for calibrating your body's internal clock, called the circadian rhythm in scientific ease, which is how your body knows when to wake up and how to time other important bodily functions. But if you keep waking up in the middle of the night, your body gets all confused and its version of the timeline starts to make about as much sense as the plot of the movie Tenet, and it doesn't help when you're crossing time zones like traveling athletes do all the time. When your body doesn't know when to sleep and when to be awake, you're gonna always feel tired and just have a bad time.
But these are professional athletes we're talking about. They're top physical specimens. They should be able to tough it out. This is their job.
This is actually a pretty common way for athletes, professional or otherwise, to think about their own performance. Nike, one of the great authorities in the world of athletic culture, sells t-shirts with the branding "Basketball Never Stops." Like, if you're a real basketball player, you don't need to sleep. But there's actually a ton of science that suggests that sleeping less just makes you a worse athlete altogether. First of all, when you're drowsy, you make bad decisions and have slower reaction times. It's like being drunk. Literally. Many scientists have tested people's decision-making and reaction times when they're drunk and when they're sleepy, and it turns out, sleepy people can be just as out of it as drunk people. The CDC actually says that drowsy driving is responsible for close to 6,000 deaths annually, and poses a risk comparable to that of drunk driving. Heck, if sleep deprivation can impair you as much as alcohol can, what makes you think basketball players can still play their best basketball on only 4 hours of sleep? Sleep deprivation stacks, too. When you're deprived of sleep for a while, your reaction time suffers, not surprising. But when you start getting sleep again, your reaction time doesn't go back to what it would have been if you had just gotten enough sleep to begin with. They call that sleep debt, and in this case, it also contributes to making athletes worse athletes when they get too little sleep on a regular basis. And we haven't even gotten to the chronic health effects of getting so little sleep on a regular basis, athlete or not. Plenty of people, athletes included, suffer from sleep disorders like insomnia, which is linked to a near absurd list of symptoms that includes but is not limited to depression, heart disease, decreased cognitive ability, and poor mood. Another example of a common sleep disorder is obstructive sleep apnea, which is when your threat relaxes too much during sleep. It's like if you took snoring and made it a clinical sleep disorder. People who suffer from obstructive sleep apnea often experience many of these symptoms. The one that surprises me most is death. Apparently, people can just up and die from choking on their own windpipe in their sleep. How freaky is that? Irregular sleep patterns are like pouring gasoline on a fire when it comes to these sleep disorders. Now, some changes are already being made by the NBA to help players get better sleep. In 2014, the NBA extended the All-Star break from just 3 days to 1 week surrounding the All-Star game. They also guaranteed 2 off days between games when changing cities during the playoffs, and increased the length of the season by 1 week. But that's far from a comprehensive solution. As 76ers power forward Tobias Harris was quoted in an ESPN article from October of 2019, I think in a couple years, sleep deprivation will be an issue that's talked about, like the NFL with concussions.
So if you or someone you know is the commissioner of a professional sports league with a schedule that puts players at severe risk for sleep deprivation and its associated health risks, you should probably work on that.